StoryCorps CT features interviews gathered by the StoryCorps Mobile Tour in Connecticut. Meet sisters Audrey and Paula Daigneault as they reflect on what it was like for Audrey and their family when she contracted the poliovirus as a child.
Right now, with the pandemic going around, I've been thinking about the pandemic that changed my life, the pandemic of polio. I was 16 months old, so I thought I'd ask Paula, what was it like? What does she remember?
So I was 5, looking forward to my birthday because then I would be going to school. Polio had kind of been a vague thing on my horizon because we didn't live in a dense city. We lived in a rural community, and I was young. I didn't know what was happening around me in the wider world. And then one night, I woke up because my sister was screaming, and she was a baby. Her crib was down at the bottom of the stairs, and my mom couldn't stop her from crying. And my mom, you could hear her voice was almost panicked. She couldn't get her to stop crying. And she called the doctor. And from there on in, nothing was the same. Doctors were coming, nurses were in and out of the house. Of course, we were quarantined. There was a warning sign out, polio, don't come near. And I remember how panicked my mother was all the time. And then confusion all around. So that's my earliest memories. Audrey, when were your first memories of polio?
I remember being in the hospital. I remember being in a crib which had very tall bars, and it kept me from getting out. And I remember being alone and scared. My first real memories are of the first operation. I was 6 then, and they were putting markers on the bone in my weak leg. My right leg had been affected more than my left. And so when I woke up from the operation, I had a cast on my leg to keep it from moving, and there was blood coming up on the cast.
Well, it was a long time, Audrey. The first time she was in the hospital, she went away, and she didn't come back for at least a year or more than a year and a couple of months.
I don't think I ever really got over that, being taken away from my family for long periods of time. And this kept going on because there were 2 operations and brace fittings. Every year or so, you'd have to go back and you'd get another brace. It would fit the new shoe. And then I remember, I think I was 2nd grade then, getting the polio vaccine at school. There were a whole bunch of us. Our whole class was lined up, and the nurses were there, and they had the shots, and they wanted somebody to go first. I knew that the needle would be nothing compared to the polio. And since there were 3 viruses that caused the polio, I was only immune to one of them, so I volunteered. And I can't understand the people today who won't have their kids vaccinated against COVID, who won't get themselves vaccinated against COVID. I mean, polio really took my childhood and my old age at the same time. I use a 3-wheeled walker because of the weakness in my muscles. And now that I have post-polio problems, they're going to put a brace back on my leg. I haven't had one since I was in 3rd grade, but now that I'm 73, I'm going to have a brace again. I would have done anything to avoid the operations and the complications in my life.
Audrey Daigneault in Norwich, Connecticut, and her sister Paula in the Bronx, New York. Produced locally by Connecticut Public Radio. See and hear more stories at ctpublic.org/StoryCorps-CT.
The StoryCorps Mobile Tour is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.